What if I told you that some of the most fascinating villains and anti-heroes you've ever seen, from these brilliant crime lords to chaotic masterminds, are all secretly following the same map, a blueprint for their downfall that was drawn up almost 700 years ago? Well, today, we're going on a little tour of that map, Dante's Inferno.
Okay, so think about this for a second. You've got an agent of pure chaos, a high school chemistry teacher who becomes a drug kingpin, and the head of a crime family. I mean, on the surface, they seem completely different, right? But what if their stories are all built on the exact same ancient foundation? Yep, you heard that right. Their moral journeys, that slow, tragic slide into darkness, it all follows a map of hell designed more than 700 years ago by the Italian poet Dante Alighieri in his absolute masterpiece, Inferno.
Now, Dante wasn't just picturing some generic fiery pit. Oh no, he was an architect. He designed hell as this giant, upside-down cone digging deeper and deeper into the earth. And the rule is simple. The further down you go, the worse the sin gets. So it's not just a place, it's a symbolic map of human behavior, showing the path from simple weakness all the way down to pure, calculated evil.
He basically organized this whole descent into three main sections, an idea he actually got from the philosopher Aristotle. So way up at the top, you've got the sins of impulse, just failures of self-control. Then you get down to the sins of violence. And at the very, very bottom, what Dante thought was the absolute worst, the sins of fraud, where our own intelligence gets twisted and corrupted. This is the exact structure we're going to follow on our way down.
All right, so our journey begins here, in what's called Upper Hell. The people here aren't condemned for being masterminds of evil. Not at all. They're here because of weakness, for just letting their passions and their appetites get the best of them. It's all about a lack of self-control.
So, in the second circle, we find the lustful. And their punishment? It's to be forever swept around in this violent, nonstop storm. It's such a powerful metaphor, right? When you let passion completely take over, you lose all control. You're just tossed around by your own desires, with no say in where you go.
And this idea is absolutely timeless. I mean, think about modern thrillers like Fatal Attraction or dramas like Lolita. They're completely built on this concept. Characters who get so consumed by an obsessive desire that it just overrides every bit of logic and morality they have, usually destroying them in the process.
Going a little deeper, we hit gluttony and greed. The gluttons are just lying in this disgusting, freezing slush, while the greedy are forced to push these huge, heavy weights against each other, forever. Both punishments are just symbols of how ugly and burdensome it is to be obsessed with mindless consumption and stuff.
And this critique is everywhere in our stories today. Films like The Wolf of Wall Street are all about the moral decay of just insane greed. And movies like The Platform, or even a kids' movie like WALL-E, are really powerful warnings about a society literally drowning in its own excess.
Okay, deep breath. We are now crossing a major boundary into lower hell. The vibe here gets a lot colder. We're leaving behind sins of weakness, and we're entering the world of malice, sins that come from a conscious, deliberate choice to hurt other people.
The seventh circle is all about violence. This is where Dante puts anyone who intentionally causes destruction, whether it's against other people, against themselves, or even against nature and God. It's all about the deliberate act of shattering peace and order.
Modern storytelling is absolutely fascinated with this circle. Think about the brutal, pointless violence in No Country for Old Men, the absolute chaos unleashed by the Joker, or just the grim reality of humanity's worst impulses in stories like Apocalypse Now or The Road.
But here's where Dante makes a really shocking argument. He says there's something worse than violence. See, violence can be an animal instinct, just an act of force. But fraud requires a brain. It's using our uniquely human ability to think and reason, and twisting it to lie and to manipulate. Fraud doesn't just hurt the body, it poisons the very trust that holds all of society together.
And that brings us to the eighth circle, which is this massive, super complex place with 10 different ditches for every type of fraud you can possibly imagine, from con artists and liars to hypocrites and thieves. Basically, this is the circle for anyone who uses their mind as a weapon. This is the home of the modern anti-hero. Think about Walter White in Breaking Bad. He doesn't win because he's the strongest. He wins because he's the smartest, because he outthinks and manipulates everyone around him. It's the same exact sin we see in the political scheming of House of Cards or the intellectual backstabbing in The Social Network.
Well, we finally reached the end of our journey. We are at the very center of the earth, the deepest, darkest point of hell. But it's not a place of fire, it's a place of ice.
Just let that sink in for a moment. For Dante, after all the violence, all the greed, all the lust, the absolute worst thing a human being could possibly do was betray someone who trusted them.
Welcome to the ninth circle, treachery. Down here, the worst sinners of all time aren't burning. They're frozen solid in a giant lake of ice. The symbolism is just devastating. Betrayal is the ultimate cold-hearted act. It's a complete rejection of human warmth, of love, of loyalty. It is the exact opposite of connection.
And this is the beating heart of our greatest tragedies. I mean, think of the betrayals inside the Corleone family and The Godfather. It leaves Michael powerful, sure, but he's also emotionally frozen and totally alone, a perfect modern echo of Dante's icy punishment. It's the constant backstabbing in Game of Thrones that ruins everything for everyone. It's the destruction of trust.
So, after our little trip through hell, what's the big takeaway? Well, this 700-year-old map isn't really about religion or punishment anymore. It's become this incredibly profound psychological blueprint for how a character falls from grace.
And you see this pattern again and again and again. A character starts with a temptation. They give in to a moral weakness. That leads them to a deeper corruption. Then come acts of violence. And it so often ends with a final, devastating act of betrayal, either of someone they love or of their own soul. This right here, this is the secret map. So the next time you're watching a movie or a show and you see a character make that one first bad decision, you'll see it. You'll see the map laid out right in front of them, and you'll know the dark path they're on. So I'll leave you with a final question to chew on. Which modern character do you think follows this map, this descent, most perfectly? It's a fun one to think about. Thanks for joining me on this journey.